So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio Reading and for my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited to be joined by an amazing guest in the form of Georgie Stone. Georgie, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm really good. Happy to be here, Matthew.
It's an absolute pleasure to get you on. I know when I announced that I was doing the interview with yourself, so many people are excited to hear from you. It's quite good timing because this is kind of like an exit interview for you, I suppose we could say. But hopefully not the last time we speak to you. But yeah, so it must have been a bit of a whirlwind for you. I mean, talk us through. I mean, we'll talk a bit about kind of how you joined Neighbours, but just the whirlwind of being a part of that show. You've been on Neighbours for on and off for 5 years now. So how has that been for you? What has it been like being a part of the Neighbours family?
Oh my goodness. It has been the greatest privilege of my life. I was 19 when I was started and I'd never acted professionally before. I'd never been in front of a camera. I was absolutely terrified, nervous every day walking into set, scared of, I didn't want to make a mistake. I wanted to, do the best I could. And like, it's been such a whirlwind because I feel like I've grown so much as a person over those 5 years. I feel like I've transitioned from child to adult, and I've grown in confidence, and I've just become more myself. I feel, and I think that's very much down to the people I met on set and the experience of being on Neighbours. So it's been crazy, and I can't believe it's been 5 years as well. Like I'm sure I only started like a couple weeks ago and now something like 5 years have passed and yeah, it's just been such a blur, but such a privilege.
I mean, obviously, Neighbours has launched the careers of some amazing talent over the years, and it is probably one of the greatest sort of learning platforms, one of the greatest sort of step ups you can possibly have in your career.
Mm.
So, I mean, to be a part of that and to know that you've got that behind you now, I mean, the world is your oyster. You're going to do fantastically going forward, but is that quite nice to know that you've had all that, sort of expertise over the years, the help and support, and to know that you've been part of an iconic program like Neighbours?
100%. I definitely would not have the confidence to like go off and do other work if it wasn't for the training of Neighbours. Like I feel obviously I have so much more to learn, and like how you kind of work on Neighbours is different to a lot of different other productions, but just like how fast we shoot, the amount of content we have to learn, learning how to be kind of in the moment and flexible and present, those are all things that you kind of have to learn on the crazy set of Neighbours. So I feel with all of those lessons so much more equipped to handle other challenging kind of set environments and workplaces, and just the confidence to know that I will be able to adapt to stressful situations, and that I'll be prepared and do as much work as I can, and then also be present in the moment. I do agree it is one of the best training grounds possible, and I feel very lucky that I had that experience, and I'm so glad that Neighbours came back so that other younger generations of actors get to have that training experience. Yeah, it is incredible. It really is.
Now, I mean, now correct me if I'm wrong, but unlike a lot of people and their journey into Neighbours, yours was a bit different because unlike, the others, they go for auditions, they try and get a particular role. For yourself, you actually created or kind of co-created the character of Mackenzie. So how did that happen? How, tell us about your involvement in it and how the character came to be and how you became Mackenzie and all that sort of stuff.
It came to be. It had kind of been formulating in my head for a while. I obviously, like, both my parents had been on Neighbours, so I was kind of aware of Neighbours as a great place to work. And it was watching Dad play Sonia's dad, Walter.
Yeah.
I was watching him, and it was obviously great to see him, but I was more like interested in the young teen group. And I think at that time that was like Ben and Piper and Xanthi. And I was watching them and I was like, firstly, slay, what a cool kind of teen group to be a part of. It'd be really cool to have a trans character. But then I didn't, think much more of it for a couple years. And then once I got to year 12, I'd kind of zoned in on the idea that acting's what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell, stories, trans stories that aren't often given the time of day and not told in like a respectful and authentic way. And I just thought, Neighbours would be a really, really great place to tell that story and would also be a great first step for me as an actor. So, yeah, I wrote a letter to the executive producer, Jason Herbson, and I sent it off to him not really expecting an answer. I pitched a character, told him why it's important to have trans rep, why Neighbours is a great place to have trans rep, why I should be the one to play the role. Really kind of gaslit my way into a job. And then, but I didn't expect anything to come from it. And then got a response 2 hours later from Jason saying, this is a great idea. Let's bring you in for a general audition. So I did do an audition, but it was just like a general. And I think the scenes were like old Piper scenes. So I did the audition, didn't hear anything for months. So I was like, great, that was fun. And then later on, another email like, are you still interested? And I'm like, yes, please give me a job. Yeah, and then it went from there, and yeah, helped create a character. So some of my original ideas were in there. They brought in some better ideas. I think my original pitch was that I was like Scott and Charlene's secret child, and Jason very kindly was like, no, we will not be doing that. But the character of Mackenzie was like way better than I could have dreamed. So yeah.
So did you have the input of the name and stuff like that, or was that kind of Jason's sort of input?
They chose the name Mackenzie. In my pitch, her name was Emma. And I spent like ages looking through all of the names of like regular characters that had ever been on the show, all of the name of recurring characters. And look, I probably missed an Emma, but I couldn't see an Emma in there. And I was like, okay, so that's the name. But they wanted Mackenzie. And originally I didn't like the name of Mackenzie. I have to like being completely honest. I was like, really? It's not my favorite, but now obviously it's just stuck and I can't imagine it not being Mackenzie and I love it. But yeah, that was their input. I was like, are you sure, Mackenzie? But it's fine.
I mean,
I'm used to it.
the great thing with Mackenzie is that she really is sort of ahead. I think she was a bit ahead of her time, really. I mean, and in a great way, because she came in and it wasn't really talked about. I don't feel the whole trans thing. It's obviously blown up in a amazing way over the past 5 years, but it was a great way for people that didn't know anything about it to kind of ease themselves into it. And I hope this comes across okay. But it's a great character because it's that Mackenzie as a character is very much she's not just a trans character, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyone can relate to her. She's just a normal human being, and that's why people love her. I mean, what's been the response from the audience to yourself about Mackenzie as a character? What's the sort of the reaction been like?
Um, on the whole, very, very positive. And during that first like initial 6 week storyline, I think it was the perfect storyline for her introduction because you established her as a character who has, wants and needs and desires beyond her gender identity. She's like had her first kiss with Hendrik. She's looking for a dad. She's wanting to fit in at school, make new friends. So like we were able to like establish her as a human, and then her transness was an important part of the story, and we were able to tell some great stories around like bathroom access and dead naming and lots of other different things. Like it was part of her story, but she was able to exist as a three-dimensional character, which was always the goal. And the response to that was really good. Lots of trans people watched it and said they really loved her, and lots of fans who didn't know a lot about trans people also watched and felt like they learnt something and it was educational for them. And there were some kind of harsh comments I got during that time, and I think it was a good learning lesson for me to like not take things on and maybe not read the comments, especially on Facebook. Um, but it was overall really great. And as the years have gone on, we've able to like expand Mackenzie uh as she's been able to just kind of soar as a character beyond her transness, but also without erasing it. And I think that is pretty radical storytelling. There haven't been many other shows that have had a trans character that they've been able to like deepen over time like that. So I think we've done a really good job with her. I definitely feel very proud of where we've taken her as a character.
Now, we must, of course, talk about the storyline of Mackenzie and Hendrix. What a love story that was. I mean, for you, when you first kind of found out that they were going to pair those two up, what was going through your head? Were you with it? Were you unsure? What was your thoughts behind that coupling?
I was confused because for the year pre like we'd had Mackenzie and Hendrix like initially, and then but at that time like everyone knew that Hendrix and Harlow were going to be a couple and Mackenzie and Richie. And so that was like the status quo for a year. I'd always thought like it would have been nice to have a bit more of Mackenzie and Hendrix, but I was kind of like that, it's fine. We had a little month or so and that's good. So when we found out that they were going to break those couples up and then Mackenzie and Hendrix were going to get together, I was a bit like, really? And also like in my head, they were going to use that as a plot device, as like a hurdle for Harlow and Hendrix's relationship, and then they were going to get them back together. That's kind of in my head what was going to happen. So I remember asking the writers a few times, and how long is this like Mackenzie and Hendrix going to last? And they were like, well, we kind of like you guys together and we're going to keep it going, which was a kind of a shock, but it was a real pleasure. And the more we did that relationship, the more we both loved it, I think. And the fans really, really loved it, which has been beautiful to see and definitely one of the more special kind of things that I've been a part of on Neighbours. So I love it. I think that, yeah, I feel very, very, very much in their camp now, more than when we first started.
I mean, you must have been quite disappointed for the character of Mackenzie when obviously Benny left the show. Those scenes, though, between the two of you at the wedding, I think are some of your best work. I think what, and then obviously the Hendrix, passing away, some of your best work. For you, when you found out he was going to leave, what was your thoughts, and what was your thoughts of that storyline as it kind of came to a close?
I was shocked. I was so shocked. Um, I, but like excited. I was really excited because the way it was described to us, it really felt like we kind of knew even then, like months before shooting, that it was going to be like one of those really significant moments in Neighbours history. Like we just had a feeling about it. And the way that, the writers were talking about it, they were, would come out of the writer's room crying, and you knew that they were, really working on some incredible stuff. I felt really excited, but really scared because I knew that it was a big responsibility and I wanted to do it well. And I didn't know whether I was up for it, like whether, because it was such a huge thing to tackle. And obviously really sad that Ben was leaving, but kind of already knew that that was happening. And also at that point, we were unsure whether the show was going to survive at all. So we were kind of thinking we might all be leaving. So I was glad that we had this like huge storyline to kind of finish us off. And I agree, it's my favorite storyline that Mackenzie's done. It was huge and it was such a challenge. It was so demanding. And I felt like I needed months after that to like heal from it. Like I felt like I really went through a full grieving process, but it was amazing. And again, like the fan response to it, it was everything we wanted it to be. So I feel very lucky.
I mean, obviously, over the years, you've had the pleasure of working with some of the Neighbours icons. I mean, obviously, you regularly get to work with Aaron Fletcher, Jackie Woodburn, Ryan Maloney. Even when like Ian Smith came back, he sort of latched on to Mackenzie, which I loved. And those scenes where Mackenzie's struggling with her grief, and Harold's there and kind of gives advice, obviously following his loss of Madge. Those scenes
Mm.
must have been special to film. What was that like?
So special. And we filmed those scenes with Ian on my birthday. So I turned 22 and then like Ian Smith was walking onto set and I hid behind Alan because I was so terrified because he's like such a legend. So I literally like ran and hid behind Alan because I was scared to say hello. But he was really sweet. And those scenes are just beautiful. And he does them so well. And it was so lovely to see you know, a character like Harold who is obviously, you know, he's been through generations and generations on Neighbours, and Mackenzie as like one of the younger characters. To see that connection, I think is a uniquely Neighbours thing, to see the connections between generations. It's one of the strengths of the show. So I felt like those scenes really kind of encapsulated some of the magic of Neighbours, and that was really important right at the end of its like initial run. Um, and yeah, a real honor to be a part of it.
Now we know
A
obviously.
great second birthday present.
I know, exactly. Now we know obviously the show then got cancelled and then came back. When you were first told about the revival, were you always going to go back, or was there ever a time where you thought, no, maybe I'm done with Mackenzie? What was that like when they asked you back?
Um, yeah, it was a lot to think about. Well, when we first found out that it was coming back, obviously like the Heritage Four were going to be a part of it, but none of us knew that it was going to happen. We were tipped off like an hour before it was announced that something like that could happen. But like none of us knew whether we'd be asked back. I was kind of in two minds whether I wanted to go back because when we were cancelled, I had about 6 months left on my contract and I knew that I was going to go after that. But and you know, by that point, it was what, like November. So it was like 4 months removed from the show being finished. And I felt like I'd just gotten to a place where I was like ready to move on because it was kind of rough getting cancelled and it was like the carpet being pulled out from underneath you. So I felt like I just got to a place where I was like, I'm cool with it. And then it coming back, yeah, I really didn't know what to do. And then when they asked me, I thought like, I think I'd feel really weird seeing the show come back and not being a part of it. And especially with Mackenzie not having had you know, a complete ending. She was kind of, we left her in a very kind of dark place. And I know there were a lot of people who weren't happy with that. So I thought, you know, it'd be a good chance to finish her story. So I suppose I came back with the knowledge that it was only going to be for, you know, a specific amount of time. I had 2 years, like a year and then an option for another year, but I told the producers that I would probably only do 1 year. And then when it came time to renew, I said I'm ready to go. And they were very, very kind in letting me not have to do that last year. And yeah, so it was good to kind of go in with the focus of like we're giving Mackenzie a like a complete ending. And I'm really glad I came back. Like this last year has been the most fun I've ever had on Neighbours. Like it's been the most joyful, wonderful experience. So I feel very, very glad that I returned. And yeah, I've met some of my best friends like in this last year. And I feel like kind of consolidated everything I'd learnt in the years previously. So yeah, it's been really, really good.
I mean, people have been loving the change in dynamic because beforehand you were kind of very much either part of the Kennedys or with the Rebeccas. So this time you've kind of been more with the share house, working with the likes of Emerald, Lucinda, Xavier, and of course Shiv, who is a great pairing. I mean, do you remember when you first met him? What that was like, getting to know him? Did you know that was going to just be a great chemistry there?
Um, I remember first meeting him. It was a couple, well, I watched his audition tape, first of all. and I thought he's incredible. And I really hope they cast him, and they did. And so when I first met him, I was a little nervous because I knew that our characters would be like getting together, and I knew that if all kind of went well, we would be like heading off together as well. So it was kind of nerve-wracking, but he was such a sweetheart. He was so kind, really, really funny. I gave him like a tour of like the sets with Kate Kendall, who was directing the first block back. And we met like Trevor the dog together, and I kind of knew it was one of those things where it was like after the first meeting I was like, yeah, we're going to be friends, and we have been, and he has been so incredible. It's been such an honor and a joy to work with him this last year, and we got so close, and yeah, it was really special. It was really sweet. And it was the same with the whole Sharehouse gang. Like we clicked very quickly. Um, and that's rare. That doesn't happen all the time. And so it was very special that we all kind of became friends. And you know, Luce Emerald and I were just so close, and they're like friends for life. And that, you know, and that's the reason why this last year has been so wonderful, and why I'm so glad that I came back. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I just wanted to briefly talk about, because when I had did a group interview, I had Xavier, Emerald, and Lucinda on, and one of the things we were talking about was when you were shooting the sort of the opening titles for the show. Obviously, you got to go and do it on a beach. I did ask whether it was a lot of fun, but apparently you tripped up a few times or didn't have the most fun on that beach.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful. There was there was like broken cutlery, broken glass on the bed, and the boys got to just sit down and just have fun. And the girls and I, we had to walk back and forth like 50 times. I was on a slope, so I'm like falling, trying to look happy. My like right arm is working overtime. It is the most, we was miserable, and it's cold as well. Um, it was awful. So whenever I look at the opening titles, I cringe. I want to throw something at the screen. It is literally the worst opening titles I have ever been a part of. And I told the producers I didn't like it, and they did nothing. It's traumatic. It really, really is. It was the worst. We were miserable.
Imagine though your
So,
step count for that day was good.
oh yeah, yeah, it would have been. It would have been. But our like emotional levels were like low, low. It was rough. It really was. Sorry for the rant. I just feel so strong. I hate those opening titles. And I've seen people on Twitter like talk about it. And I'm like, I know. Like, I wish they didn't pick that shot. Like, I would have chosen anything else other than that. Um, yeah.
Now we
But that's
must
a good
talk.
thing about me.
No, no, no.
Sorry.
We love a rant. It's fine. Now we must talk about sort of coming to the end of the show for yourself, and though when you obviously knew you were coming to the end. I mean, the idea of sending Mackenzie and Haz off to Paris, I think, is fantastic. I mean, for you, was that always kind of in the back of your mind, or did you completely leave it down to the writers to sort of what happens to Mackenzie at the end? But were you happy?
Yeah, I was happy. I was especially happy with Mackenzie getting a job as a human rights lawyer, because that was something that she had talked about like way back at the beginning. Like very, very near the beginning. She talked about wanting to be a human rights lawyer. And I always thought, after Hendrix dying, yes, her finding love again is beautiful and wonderful. And that makes me really happy. And like a neighbor's wedding is a great kind of iconic way to show a happily ever after, which has always been Mackenzie's kind of goal, or something that she's always been dreaming about. But after Hendrix dying, and I think he really was like the love of her life, I always wanted Mackenzie's like healing and happiness to come from her finding the things that bring her joy and chasing her dreams, and going off and achieving them. So Mackenzie getting a job as a human rights lawyer, working closely with the UN, and going off to Paris, I think is perfect. And I did tell them that I wanted her to get a job opportunity. and to go somewhere. I was thinking like New York, but like Paris, perfect, absolutely perfect. So I was really, really happy with that. For a while, like at the beginning, I think they talked about maybe like Has getting a job opportunity, and I was quietly like, nah, she's a lawyer, like she's ambitious. She should get a job. And it take her away. So I was really, really happy with that.
Now,
Yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, I've had the pleasure of seeing the episode. Obviously, your final episode goes out today. It's a beautiful episode. I mean, a few things we have to talk about. First of all, the butterfly. I mean, I'm guessing that wasn't real, but wow, that scene was just beautiful. What was that like to film? Because I imagine you're looking at nothing.
Yeah, looking at nothing. So I just kind of had to pretend where the butterfly was and kind of react to it. That was kind of a difficult scene to film because we didn't have a lot of time. So we only did that a few times before we finished. And originally it was going to be me like kind of talking and monologuing, and then the director Chris said that he imagined it more like it was in my head. So we kind of did a couple different versions, and I didn't know what it was going to be when it was on screen. So it was nice to see that it looked really good. But it was kind of, yeah, that was a tough one to film. But it was a sweet scene.
And the other thing we have to talk about, and I loved this, was the fact that obviously Ian Smith, Harold, walks Mackenzie down the aisle. I feel that was a great way to round things off, especially obviously we talked about kind of the first time that Harold was on back on the show. So what was that like to get to work with him again?
So nice. It's really, really nice. The Mackenzie and Harold's relationship, I think, is really beautiful. And I think there was probably a lot in the 2 year time jump that we didn't get to see that was them really creating this really beautiful friendship. So yeah, I thought that was really sweet. And I think Mackenzie's always been like looking for father figures. She's had a lot of different father figures over the years. So it's nice, I suppose. Uh, she's got another one in Harold, and he's really wonderful. And yeah, it shows that she's like she came to Erinsborough looking for her dad, and she's left with so many different people who love her and who she loves, and so many new connections. And yeah, she's not alone anymore. So I think that that is really beautiful, and as you say, a perfect way to kind of round out their relationship and round out her story.
Now, I mean, if you were to meet Mackenzie in real life, I've asked this question to many people over the years, but do you think you would get on well with Mackenzie? Could you imagine being friends with her?
Yes, I think we would be friends. I think Mackenzie is like a more intense version of me. She's very, very moralistic. She's very she can be quite intense. And I think maybe that would make me go like, whoa. And she's the poor girl's had a lot of trauma as well. So I also feel like I'd tell her to go to therapy. Maybe see Rhonda a little bit. But I think we'd be friends. I think at the end of the day, she's a real sweetheart and she looks after the people she loves, and she's a fun time as well. So yeah, I think we'd be pals.
And also, I was just going to comment on the fact that Mackenzie seems to have ended up in hospital quite a few times. And I mean, how many times have you had your arm in a sling? That seems like I'm sure at least three times.
So many times, and I've hated every time. The last time was fine because at least I could take my hand out, but like the cast that I had to wear for 6 weeks was awful and so hard to get my arm into and so uncomfortable, and it did not look nice. Um, yeah, Mackenzie gets injured a lot. She is a real issue she has. She ends up in hospital a lot, but it's one of her quirks.
Now, one of the questions that I have to ask, and I know that people are going to be wanting to know this, do you think we'll ever see Mackenzie again? Would you ever consider coming back in the future if the storyline was right?
Maybe. Look, never say never. Never say never. I think Mackenzie has some younger half siblings. And so I think if they were ever to come in and then they wanted me to come in to meet them, then I would come in for them, I think. And I also told the girls that if any of them were to get married, so if like Holly or Sadie were to get married, I'd come back to like support them. Um, uh, but yeah, I think I have to be it'd be so easy to come back and then just want to stay. So I think I'm going to have to be very firm with myself in really looking for new opportunities and playing different characters. And but who knows? Because I feel like Ramsay Street will always be home for me. So I'd be very, very, very tempted to come back for sure.
Because I mean, someone else who was a big part of Mackenzie's life, obviously Toady, who's kind of another sort of father figure who's been there through it all. Obviously, we know he's leaving as well. So, I mean, I mean, when you know that sort of other cast members are leaving, does that make it easier for yourself knowing that you're also going, or does that make it harder?
Um, I think it made it easier. It was really interesting because his last day was the same as Shiv and my last day. So we all ended at the same time. And that was a weird, weird like few weeks leading up to that because, there were three main cast members leaving at the same time. And obviously like Ryan leaving, that is huge. So it was a lot, but it was good. And we had a lot of conversations about it. And he was very confident and positive about him leaving. And I think that gave me some like confidence as well.
Now, just before we go, we just wanted to ask, what are you looking forward to going forward? What's next for Georgie? Tell us a bit about what you can tell us about going forward.
Um, what can I talk about? I'm working on a film. I'm developing a film. Um, and that has been a really wonderful process, and that has been in the works for a while. Um, and I will not say any more because I don't know what I can say. But I've just been overseas. I was in LA for a little while and in London, and I think I just want to travel over there more, and I'd love to work overseas, and I'd love to spend some more time in the UK because I love London so much. Um, yeah, I want new experiences and new challenges and new characters, and I want to do more writing and producing. Um, I think, um, yeah, there's definitely more to do. I'm very excited, and there's stuff in the works, and we will see.
We're excited. We're excited to find out more about that. Let's also briefly just say, what was it like at the Emmys? That must have been amazing.
It was fun. That was really, really fun. It was a good experience. The Americans were all very lovely. I got to see Kelly Clarkson from a distance and I lost my mind. Also, Jennifer Hudson was there and I lost my mind about that as well. It was a good experience and I was there with like Stefan and Annie and Gemma. So it was a good party of people. Yeah, it was fun.
Now, I just want to say it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for giving up your time. You are welcome back anytime if you want to talk about any future projects, you're welcome back on. But thank you for giving up your time. Of course, keep safe. And yeah, thank you again.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.